Remember the satisfying click of sliding a cassette into a deck, the whir of the reels, and the anticipation as you pressed play? The cassette tape wasn't just a way to play music, it was an experience. From its heyday in the 1980s to its fall in the 2000s, the cassette tape was a cultural phenomenon, shaping how we listened to music, shared stories, and even expressed our creativity. In today's episode, we're diving into the story of how cassette tapes rose to glory, ruled the audio world, and eventually faded into the background. Welcome to the History of Simple Things, where we delve into the fascinating history behind the little things that shape our world. The cassette tape was born in 1963, thanks to the brilliant minds at Philips, a Dutch electronics company. Back then, the goal was simple: create a compact, affordable way for people to record and play audio. Early cassettes were mostly used for dictation. Think of journalists recording interviews or students taping lectures. They were small, portable, and easier to use than reel-to-reel tapes, which were bulky and required a fair amount of expertise to operate. What really set cassettes apart was their magnetic tape technology. Thin strips of tape coated with magnetic material allowed sound to be recorded and played back with surprising clarity for the time. It wasn't long before the cassette found its way into people's homes, schools, and cars. The cassette tape truly hit its stride in the 1970s, but the game changed forever in 1979 when Sony introduced the Walkman. Suddenly, music was no longer confined to living rooms or car stereos. It became portable. You could take your favorite songs jogging on a bus ride or even to the beach. This portability made cassettes the first truly personal music format. Unlike vinyl records, which were more suited for group listening sessions, cassettes let you curate your own soundtrack for life. It was a revolution in how people consumed music, paving the way for the personalization we see in today's streaming platforms. By the 1980s, cassette tapes were everywhere. They weren't just a way to listen to pre-recorded albums, they were tools for creativity and connection. Enter the mixtape. Making a mixtape wasn't just about recording songs, it was an art form. You carefully selected tracks, arranged them in a meaningful order, and maybe even decorated the case with doodles or notes. Mixtapes were deeply personal gifts. They could say what words couldn't, whether it was confessing love, sharing a friendship, or just introducing someone to new music. In a way, mixtapes were the original playlists, and their impact on relationships and music discovery was profound. Meanwhile, the music industry thrived. Cassette sales soared, with global distribution making music accessible to people from all walks of life. Albums released on cassette could reach remote areas where vinyl records were impractical. Cassettes democratized music in a way no format before them had achieved. While cassettes were wildly popular, they weren't perfect. Sound quality was always a point of contention. Compared to vinyl, cassettes had limitations: hissing, muffled tones, and the occasional need to rescue your favorite tape from a tangled mess inside the player. Then came the competition. In the late 1980s, compact discs, or CDs, started gaining traction. CDs offered better sound quality, durability, and the ability to skip tracks effortlessly. By the early 1990s, CDs were rapidly replacing cassettes as the preferred format for music lovers. The 1990s marked the beginning of the end for cassette tapes. As CD players became more affordable and music shifted towards digital formats, cassettes began to lose their appeal. By the early 2000s, MP3 players and file-sharing platforms like Napster delivered the final blow. Suddenly, music was no longer tied to a physical format. It was stored in tiny devices or streamed online. Cassettes couldn't compete with the convenience of digital music. They were bulky, required rewinding, and their sound quality didn't match up. Record labels stopped producing albums on cassette, and tape decks started disappearing from cars and home audio systems. Yet even as cassette tapes faded into obscurity, they never truly disappeared. Nostalgia has a funny way of reviving old trends. In recent years, cassettes have seen a surprising resurgence, albeit in niche circles. Indie bands and artists have embraced the format, using it as a way to stand out in an increasingly digital world. There's something tactile and intimate about holding a cassette, popping it into a deck and hearing the music play. For younger generations who grew up with Spotify and YouTube, cassettes offer a glimpse into a simpler, analog past. For older listeners, they're a trip down memory lane. The rise and fall of cassette tapes wasn't just about technology, it was about the way they shaped culture. Cassettes made music more accessible and portable, giving people the freedom to listen on their terms. They fostered creativity, whether through mixtapes or DIY recordings. Perhaps most importantly, cassettes taught us to value music in a way that's easy to forget in the age of streaming. Back then, every song required effort, rewinding, fast-forwarding, or flipping the tape. That effort made listening to music feel intentional and meaningful. Today, cassette tapes are relics of a bygone era, but their influence is undeniable. They paved the way for portable music, inspired the creation of playlists, and reminded us that sometimes the imperfections in a format can make it special. So, whether you're someone who remembers spending hours crafting the perfect mixtape or a curious soul discovering cassettes for the first time, there's something magical about these little plastic rectangles. They may no longer rule the audio world, but their story is a testament to the power of music to evolve, adapt, and connect us all. The cassette tape's journey is a reminder that every technology, no matter how revolutionary, has its time. But just because something fades doesn't mean it's forgotten. The cassette left behind a legacy of creativity, connection, and most importantly, the joy of music. What are your memories of cassette tapes? Did you have a favorite mixtape? Or do you still have a stack of tapes gathering dust somewhere? Share your stories in the comments below. And if you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them as well. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.